Hey everybody, welcome to my AMA. I'm Eric Johnson, VP of Engineering. Let me open up the agenda doc. Looks like Emily is mid-typing. Do you want to vocalize your question, Emily?
Yeah, happy to, thanks. So I think you've been at GitLab for 2 years. For people who haven't been here that long, can you talk a little bit about how the engineering org has changed in the last 2 years? And then how do you think it'll change in the next 2 years?
Okay, yeah, good question. When I joined, September 2017, so I crossed my 2-year anniversary a couple months ago. I think I was the 99th person in engineering at the time, so we were just crossing about 100. The things I recall about starting then were we didn't have management as a specialty, is the way I would describe it. So we had a stand, we had leads, so we had our best technical members of the team, and we were saying, hey, here's the one-on-ones, here's the hiring plan, you've got 2 full-time jobs. And that was really tough. So one of the first things I did was we created the dual career path, which is, I think, important for every engineering organization, but particularly for one that is meant to grow as much as we have. That was essential, I think. So the managers, some leads became managers, some leads became staff engineers. People like Camille have gone on and become a distinguished engineer, which is great to see him succeed. But the managers have spent probably greater than 50% of their time on hiring in the past 2 years, and that was a big change. But that's what was necessary to grow from about 100 to, I think today we're probably about 450 in 2 years. So that's quite dramatic growth, and that's probably the single biggest change I've seen is just the hyper growth that we've gone through. Things aren't perfect, but they're pretty good. There's startup history is kind of littered with cautionary tales of companies that have grown too fast, lost their culture, and the wheels have flown off. And that hasn't happened here. So I'm proud of everybody for the investment they've made in growing the team and doing it well enough where things are, you look around, things are pretty good, all in all. And that's really, really hard to do well. And I'm particularly proud how we say, we don't say culture fit, we say culture add, because you have to be up for changing your culture somewhat when you're going to add that many people. They bring their own experience, they bring their own values, they bring their own kind of individuality, and you have to be up for adding those things to your organization. At the same time, we've got that kernel, our core values, and I think we've done a good job living those, talking about those, and that's kind of what is meant to stay mostly the same. We've got some, I think, town hall style meetings, open discussions moderated by employees coming up this week about our values. So I encourage everybody to attend those, put your questions in, raise them in the meeting. I think there's an anonymous question form for people that don't feel comfortable vocalizing them in the meeting, and I think that's going to be a really interesting, valuable discussion. In terms of the next 2 years, we're doing headcount planning as we speak, so we're gearing up for more growth. I think it's going to be somewhere between 50 and 100%, probably closer to that higher number next year. And one of the things I want to underscore is that the goal is not to be big. We don't want to be a big company. I think we want to be as small as we possibly can be while still being able to build our product vision, and that's the key. There's a market opportunity that the board and Sid and the E group thinks is out there. We need to build a certain product to satisfy that market opportunity. We need to be a certain team to build that product, and that's why we're growing. It's important not to lose sight of that. Beyond that, when I started, quality and security really weren't things. I had 4 departments, not 6, and so I've watched those 2 in particular grow from scratch, from nothing, and that's been really exciting. I think they're both really, really important. I think quality is one where we're not even yet to our ideal gearing ratio. So I think Mech and my goal is to get there this year with this headcount hiring plan. Same for UX. We've been kind of behind in UX and quality. That's despite those departments growing 300 or 400%. We just couldn't get there practically this year, but that's going to happen next year. And so I think we can look forward to the quality of our enterprise product being raised further, the user experience being raised further, and kind of delivering on the promise of those two departments in the next fiscal year. I'm really excited by what Marin is doing in infrastructure. He's got delivery. That team has shipped single code base, the first iteration of continuous delivery, lots of exciting things. They're going to keep carrying that forward. We'll be deploying multiple times a day at some point next year, which is great. He's also got our first scalability team. So that'll be a team of backend engineers doing what needs to be done in the application layer for the sake of scaling GitLab.com, which is 3 or 4 orders of magnitude the largest instance of GitLab in the world. So that's great. And then, over the weekend, I had some time to reflect on the first iteration of our headcount hiring plan. I'm like, maybe we should start a second scalability. We don't have one yet, but maybe we should start a second scalability team with Marin this year. So I'll raise that to him and Jerry and see if that's something that we want to do. Because we do, we'll have 500 or so engineers soon working on that product. A team of 5 working on scalability dedicated to it may not be enough. Probably isn't enough. So that's what I think about going forward is better scalability, more continuous delivery, higher quality, higher security, better UX, all those sorts of things. Jamie, you got number 2.
Yes. What do you see as the biggest challenges right now and in the next 6 months?
Yeah. I think I touched upon some of them in my prior answer. Hypergrowth always brings challenges, and I think it's easier possible right now to take for granted that's going just okay, but that's going okay because of a monumental amount of effort by all the leaders in engineering, with the help of our recruiting organization too, the sources and recruiters. Everybody's doing a pretty fabulous job. So if we get lazy, forget that, we take our foot off the gas, that won't go so well. And I want to make sure that doesn't get lost. I do think around GitLab.com, I pushed this big change about a month ago to intentionally put availability above the velocity of the development organization. That's it's a handbook change. It's something we've communicated out, but we really need to change the everyday habits of about 500 people to deliver on that. And so we're going to keep pushing on that. And we've got some headwinds for stabilizing GitLab.com that other companies don't have. And by other companies, I mean companies where they are just pure SaaS. They've got a code base. That code base runs at a certain scale for their software as a service offering, and the two are tightly coupled together. It becomes nonsensical in that type of arrangement for an engineer to launch any feature that doesn't immediately work at the required scale. But we're open core, we're different. So there's there's thousands of contexts for our code aside from GitLab.com, where it is valid for a certain feature to run everywhere but .com. And so we lack a natural forcing function for scale. And that means we have to work harder to create it. With our definition of done, with the weekly grooming meeting that infrastructure runs, with development and product management, and other things that we've built. But it's a unique challenge. There are not really many or any open core SaaS companies out there. So we've got a unique challenge, and we got to work hard to solve that, to make it really truly enterprise grade. The team's made unbelievable progress over the last 2 years that I've been here. The GCP migration, meeting all kinds of scaling challenges, fending off all kinds of abuse and whatnot. But we're right at that cusp, and that cusp is almost binary, like enterprise grade or not enterprise grade. That's a perception your customers have of you. And despite the kind of consistent up and to the right improvement, we've yet to kind of cross over permanently into that cusp of like, yes, I will give you my mission critical workloads. And so that can't be taken for granted. And it's hard to prioritize right now because it's, self-managed is still the lion's share of our revenue. And so it feels a little bit strange to be putting one thing at or arguably above the other when like 90-95% of our revenue is coming from the other side. But I think that's what it's going to take to make it as available as we want it to be. I think you almost have to be SaaS first to meet our goals. Rupert, are you on? You want to talk about number 3?
Yeah, so you may have already touched on a couple of these, Eric, but I just wanted to understand your take on the current and future states of recruiting and hiring processes within the engineering org. So, what do you think we're doing well? Where could we be better? And where would you like to see us in 12 months' time?
Yeah, I think, so great question. Thanks for raising it. I think I'm really excited by the internship program we just launched. So we're actively recruiting now for a class of, it's a pilot program. It's not a full internship program, but it's going to test the waters for a remote internship program next summer. Jean and Rose and a bunch of other people in the working group did a fantastic job launching that. I'm so excited to see how that works out. I think the goal is to be recruiting now and be cutting offers hopefully in the December timeframe for next summer. So that's great. I think we want to engage the sourcers more. I've heard from Scott that PM does a weekly meeting with the recruiters and sourcers for their roles, and I think engineering should do the same. Active sourcing is it's really the primary way that we've been able to improve diversity quite a bit. And so we should be talking about that more and making sure that that emphasis is continually there. It's also the way that we've been able to keep our average location factor within the company's goals. So, we've got a plan for the company. The vast majority of our operating expense is headcount. And the vast majority of our headcount is in engineering. And engineering, it means we have a big responsibility to make sure we're hiring people all around the globe so we stay within the financial envelope that the company has set. I think the goal is, it was like 0.58 or now it's 0.62 or something like that. And we're right in there. But when you look at the trend over the past 5 years, it's a very defined, but slow, but defined up and to the right trend. And so I'd like to see us really get more intentional about that and kind of flatten out that curve. And I think also one of I mentioned diversity before, but one of the aspects of diversity that's unique for GitLab is location diversity. Most companies really don't have to care about this because they open up an office building and they have people who live near that office building, within a 30 minutes radius or something like that. We can hire anywhere, but I think what we're seeing is that the locations are kind of zooming into like North America and Europe to some extent. I think those are the two. And I think we've really got to deliver on the promise of GitLab and really be a truly global company. So I'd like to see us take the foothold we've got in Asia Pacific and grow that more. I think we've got not even a foothold in the African continent. I'd love to see more going on there, and to kind of balance that out. And at the same time, try to do that in leadership, not just on average. One of the ways you can kind of optically get better at diversity, but really actually screw it up, is by being diverse kind of at your entry level positions, but not representing that higher up in the organization. So I think it's really important that we get better representation in leadership roles. That answer your question? It's 2, 3 or 4 things. Great. Gabriel, number 4.
So first of all, I'm very happy that we finally gave stability a priority that it deserves. So thanks for that. And my question is more like, have you been able to measure any improvement on that area? Like, can be something direct or indirect consequences?
Yeah, so we do measure availability. Maybe while I'm talking, someone from the infrastructure department can put in links to our charts and whatnot. It hasn't been that long. Also, over that same time span, we've hit some bumps with our underlying infrastructure. And so I would guess if we look at the chart, it's probably going to be pretty choppy and we're not going to see an actual result, at least not yet. But I think we should soon. We want to get over that 3.9s cusp and then carry it forward from there. Eventually what's going to have to happen is, we've got an isolation working group. We're going to have to be sharding some of our data stores, building better resource isolation within the application, eventually be multi-data center or multi-region. And then we can potentially drive availability beyond the SLAs that our infrastructure service providers give us, which is like 99.95 or something like that. That's our goal today, but eventually we should be able to move beyond that with multi-region. But yeah, I think that's the easy answer is we haven't measured an improvement yet. And Andrew, thanks for putting those dashboards in the YouTube link in there. Much appreciated. Number 5.
Yes. So just out of curiosity, I would like to know how many engineers will be working at GitLab by the end of next year. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so I think between 50 and 100% more than we have today. So it means we'll probably be about 1,000-person department by the end of the next fiscal year. That'll be January 31, 2021. Again, it's about building our product vision. It's not about just being large. We're doing headcount planning as we speak, so we'll see what happens. In general, we're at a pretty good level of maturity where we're growing symmetrically, but there are some groups that need to grow disproportionately to others. So I mentioned UX and quality are still behind their gearing ratios. They'll grow a little bit more on average. I think tech writing, we're a little bit behind. We need to grow that more on average, and a few other things. The interesting thing is that despite this growth, we're going to keep growing. But when you look at like the 5-year plan, engineering or R&D, which is what kind of the finance industry calls us, we have to start to dial down the proportion of the company's revenue that we are. So that doesn't mean that we're going to shrink. We're going to keep growing, most likely. But we need to get down to, I think the standard is something like R&D should be 20% of your revenue. And right now we're like 60% or something like that. So everybody that's in engineering, enjoy these times, because these are the times in the life cycle of a company we can spend a lot of the company's resources on developing a lot of product. But when we go public, direct list, whatever, you have to start to conform to what public company investors think a company needs to be. And there's a certain proportion of revenue that goes towards R&D that tends to yield successful companies over 10 and 20-year time spans. So that's going to have to come down. But it'll come down as a result of the growth slowing, not shrinking, but slowing growth, and revenue increasing. And I would expect us to be a majority sales organization, probably by, I forget exactly what the headcount plan looks like, but probably maybe by the end of the year, they might pass engineering. Because it becomes more important to sell the stuff that you have. Tom Atkins, you got number 6.
Yeah, Tom Armstrong, actually, no problem. But for perspective,
that size, we've got. It used to be like we only had one Tom, and now we've got multiple Toms.
Oh, no.
Initial, it's crazy.
We should all just change our names to Eric or something. That'd be easier. For prospective clients with workloads that exceed current design capabilities of GitLab.com, very large monorepos, is there we're having some difficulty with a POC client right now. Is there an escalation and tracking process within engineering to engage with the sales team?
So great question. Kind of a clarifying question is, are we steering these customers towards self-managed, or are we pressing ahead with .com?
They've asked to be .com because they're global. They have a team. They want to be a SaaS. They're a SaaS company themselves, and based in San Francisco. They have a large development team spread around the world, one in Australia, and they would like us to manage the monorepo.
Okay, so they don't want to invest in a team to run their own infrastructure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So one is product management, and there's so that what engineering does with their time is so important. It justifies a whole nother department to kind of decide what that is. So there's a couple of different ways you can just get on Scott's calendar. We have a weekly meeting called PM in Engineering. It's with Scott, myself, Sid, and several other people are regular attendees. So you'd be welcome to join that and put an agenda item in, and we could talk about how can we quantify this? How can we turn it into a set of actionable tasks? There's also, if it's something outside the application layer, there's that infrastructure meeting I mentioned. It's called Availability and Performance Grooming. It's on my calendar. My calendar is open to the world, so everyone can see what I'm doing. I want to say it's Tuesday mornings Pacific time. So you could look at my calendar, add yourself to that agenda, and come and again, we could talk about what exactly the bottleneck is. Try to put some type of, larger, smaller than a red box estimate on it, and see who the right team is to take that on.
Okay, and is there a quick follow up? Is there a Slack channel I can jump onto for either of those?
There's yes, there's the product channel. There's infrastructure-lounge, where that department tends to hang out and answer questions. Some of their other channels are filled with alerts and bots and things like that. There's also a channel specifically for that PM and engineering meeting, and let me see if I can see what that is. Product. I think it's product-engineering. Is the one that's specific for collaboration between the two. And I think this would be a good example of something that bridges both of those areas.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Gabriel, you got number 7.
So Megan, do you see any other immediate risks or things that we should be doing to prevent our dependencies changing license that we can use inside our product? For example, what just happened with Sentry, what we should do to mitigate this?
Yeah, and maybe someone could link to a blog article or something about what happened with Sentry. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything we can do to mitigate that. I mean, if you tend to be one of those people that believes we're kind of at the end of a cycle of venture capital of the economy, it means some companies might be under pressure to close their doors or start to make money and change their business model or something like that. And that means we might be in a window of time where this is going to happen at a higher frequency than, let's say, 4 years ago. But I don't think we can control what other open source projects or other companies are doing. We just have to make smart decisions about what their licenses are and the people involved and their incentives to see if it's dependency we want to take on in the future. I know there's a lot of discussions going on about Sentry and what we might do to either to continue to use it or build something else. That's an active discussion right now, but I'm struggling to think of something we could do defensively. I think it's to some extent it's just kind of like the circle of life for these projects.
I maybe have like a very quick suggestion to this. Some companies that depends on open source, like Red Hat, they do try to be more involved with the projects that drives revenue to them. So they have like people contributing to these open source projects. So if something like this happens in the future, they maybe can fork the product. They already have people that knows the product better and can take care of that, or in a way it mitigates this change of license because the other part will be losing your contributions.
So do you mean have open source contributors to these dependencies or products working at GitLab but working on these other things?
Yeah, for things that are really core to our product, I think this is maybe the right thing to do. Okay,
yeah, that's a reasonable suggestion. We're certainly at that scale where having one or two people work on things like that is probably smart. We've had Christian working on Git for a long time now. That's a very obvious, important dependency, but there's obviously, as you're pointing out, many others. So that's a good thing, and the time is perfect to think about this with headcount planning going on. So we could do a carve out for maybe 2 or 3 of those things and talk about having people at the company working on these other things. Thanks for that suggestion. Jean, you want to talk about your question number 8?
Yeah. Hi, Eric. So if you look back at the last 12 months, what's the biggest kind of like personal learning or self-improvement that you've experienced?
Yeah, good question. I wish I had seen this one the night before because I could probably put together a really good answer. But something that I keep going back to is, and this is for people that are looking for advice and they want to do what I'm doing or something like that. This is going to be really terrible advice, but like having children has really made me prioritize my time pretty ruthlessly. I used to be, and I'm going back 10 or 15 years when I started my career, I would be the person that would, work nights, weekends. I would pull all nighter to meet a deadline or something like that. And that work ethic was, appreciated and lauded sometimes, like acts of heroism, but it wasn't possible anymore. Like once you get to a certain age, once you have a significant other, once you have children, you just can't do that anymore. And it forced me to really think about, my working hours and what do I really need to prioritize within the window that I've got. And I'm much better for it. Like I'm so much more efficient than I was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think there's people that are probably they probably were able to figure that before having kids, but that's what it really took for me. And we've got a third one right now. So my wife and I welcomed our third daughter on September 1st. So we've got about a 10-week-old. So as we speak, this is very prescient to me. We're thinking about this kind of like all the time. So I guess that would be the advice is, if you're not planning on having kids, try to figure this out in your own way. I think I accomplish more with less now, and it's not even close. And I wish I'd been able to figure that out earlier. So it looks like we are at time. Thanks everybody for the great questions. I'll take the ones that didn't make the cut, and I'll probably Slack them to my VPE Slack channel. So people that want to keep the discussion going, I'll head over there. But have a good day and a good week.